So a very big welcome to the introduction to the Supporting Our Branches Branch Resource Review briefing session. As I hope you'll have picked up, this session is very much targeted at those of you who don't know very much about the review, and we hope that by the end of the 90 minutes, you'll feel better informed. Everything you hear today can be found in the report and motion 72, the links for which you'll have received by email. Before we begin, we will be running 2 polls this evening, one now and one at the end. Please could you submit your responses when prompted? And now to some housekeeping. Can I remind the audience of the importance, sorry, I've just poll, fill it in. So can I remind the audience of the importance of treating each other with dignity and respect at all times? I'm expecting that standard to be met during this event as we would do in any other Unison meeting. We won't be using the chat function during the meeting, so please do not use the chat function. We encourage lots of contributions this evening. We'd like to hear from everyone, so we ask that you limit your questions to 1 in each section where we've got the time, and your contribution, if you can, please make it no longer than 2 minutes so we can reach as many of you as possible. Thank you. If you'd like to speak, use the raise your hand. So to do that, you go to the participants area and you'll find that facility in there. We've been joined by 2 BSL interpreters. They are Karen Green and Julie Fletcher. If you'd like to use their services, please look for them in the participants list and pin them to your screen. You do this in the participants list as well. We also have a captioning facility in Zoom. Julie Whitaker from CJ Captioning will be doing this. If you're using a separate screen, use the link sent in the registration email. If you don't have it, no problem. We can send you a dedicated link now. And if you'd like that, please raise your hand and we'll make sure that that gets sent out to you. We'd like to keep everyone on mute for the majority of the time that the presentation is being made. We'll unmute you if you wish to ask a question. And as I said, just raise your hand if you want to do that in the parts of the presentation and tonight where we've got questions open. The presentation's expected to last for about 45 minutes, but as I've said, there will be breaks for question. Raise your hand in the participant area, and we'll also hopefully have time for some questions at the end of the session. We have IT support at the meeting. Anyone with issues with IT, if you can please email the contact details that were in your joining instructions. Just a reminder that the session is being recorded. So if you're sitting comfortably, we'll begin. So the purpose of this presentation is to explain the background and rationale behind the set of proposals that the NEC endorsed on the 26th of February 2021. Your panel today is Josie Bird, sits on the NEC and is the chair of the Branch Resource Review. Lillian Mesa, regional convener for Unison Scotland. Maureen Lamarinel, NEC representative. Nikki Ramanandi, regional convener for Unison Northern Region. And myself, Becky Ty, regional convener for Unison Eastern Region. We all hold formal positions in the union, but ultimately we are activists just like yourselves. So today, we thought we'd remind you of the background to the Branch Resource Review, look at the whole package of proposals, including the funding scheme. And as I said, there will be an opportunity for questions at several points through the presentation. Before we look at what the proposals are, by way of background, who were the 24 lay members? Well, they were 12 activists from the NEC and 12 from the regions. So colleagues came from West Sussex to Lanarkshire, Belfast to Chelmsford. The work of the Branch Resource Review was divided into 4 small work projects looking at 4 areas, which were branches, regions, the National Union and finances. And after extensive discussions, the Branch Resource Review Group are delighted to make 14 recommendations to ensure a modern, flexible, supportive union moving forward. The response to the survey conducted in February 2020 indicated that what branches want to do most is, number one, recruit and retain members, number two, develop activists, and number three, support members with representation, in that order. Of course, there was some variation according to region or service group, but the overarching picture was this. And to do this, branch activists told us that they needed, number one, more time, number two, more regional support, and number three, more funding. Funding was the third priority there. The survey also told us that communications were an issue in some branches in Wales and the Eastern region, and participation was an issue raised by branches in Greater London and the South East. We followed up the survey with in-depth interviews with a cross-section of branches within the union, helped by the research company Britain Thinks. This confirmed that branches' needs vary widely, but what is required is a modern, flexible and supportive union. I'm now going to hand you over to Josie to take you through some of the package.
Thanks very much there, Becky. I've just unmuted myself. I almost forgot. So I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of detail of the package. These are the 14 proposals that are in the motion that we are proposing at the Special Delegate Conference. You can read all about them in the motion, and if you want to read about them in more detail, we've published the report on our website, on the Unison's website as well, so you can sit and do that at your leisure. So some of these you may have heard about, some of them may be new. I'm not going to read through them all now because there'll be an opportunity for different speakers to cover all of them to some degree as we go through the rest of the presentation. I just wanted an opportunity for people to see them, the breadth of issues that we focused on and that we've covered, and the different sort of areas. It's probably just worth highlighting here. We've grouped them into 3 areas: finance, systems and support. Actually, because the survey that we did said that time was what branch activists wanted the most, all of these proposals that we've got going forward should help branches save time in one form or another. Some of it very, very directly, for example, the facility time strategy, some of it in a far more indirect way, such as the branch portal. But all of them in some way, they should make branch activists' lives easier and therefore give them a little bit of time back. So if we move on now, we will move on to the proposed branch funding scheme. While it came third in the national survey, and we've made sure that we didn't make it the sole focus of the work we did, clearly we know it's still very important to branches, and what the finances look like is pretty important. What we've got here represented on the pictorial is what the proposed branch funding scheme looks like, and at the bottom there just a comparator for what it currently looks like, so you can see where the changes are. So the big change is that currently the total branch funding scheme comes in at 23.5% of the union's annual income, and we're proposing to increase that to 25.5%. So that's a 2% increase, and obviously it's a percentage, so it fluctuates as the union's income fluctuates. But we costed that on the outturn at the end of 2019, and that represented approximately a £3.3 million increase in funding that we would be directing to branches going forward. And we've split that up. 23.5% goes directly into the branch funding formula for branches. That's a 0.5% increase on the 23% that currently goes to branches. And what we're also doing is proposing the introduction of a new branch support and organising fund. That's funded at 2% of annual income. What it would do is it would replace the regional pool that we currently have. For information, the regional pool is currently funded at 0.5% of our annual income. So that represents a 1.5% increase or a 4-fold increase on the regional pool. So it's really quite a significant investment and quite a significant increase in the funds and ability and freedom that that'll give with to regions to support branches, which of course was a huge priority that was highlighted to us in the survey as well. I'm not going to spend ages talking about the branch funding formula specifically here this evening, because what we have done is we've given a commitment that all branches will have an opportunity to find out what their own financial settlement will be. Clearly, this is not the forum to share that. That will be done on an individual basis for branches. So branches will have an opportunity to discuss their own circumstances in more detail on a one-to-one basis. But I'm happy to talk about some of the principles of that's underpinned our work. And if we move on to the next slide, I think these are some of probably the most asked questions that we get when we talk about things like the branch funding formula. And the first is really what drove our decisions and our discussions when we were coming up with our proposals. And really there were 3 absolute cornerstones that drove that. We knew that we wanted a branch funding formula. In fact, we wanted all of our proposals to be fair and equitable for all branches. And we think that we're really achieving that with the changes that we're proposing to the branch funding formula. We know we have a situation at the moment where some branches record high levels of surpluses. That is, they don't need to spend all of their funding each year. And that often happens to the same branches on an annual basis. So those branches naturally have accrued quite large reserves. We also have a situation where we have some branches, again, it tends to be the same branches year on year that have quite large deficits. That is, their annual branch income isn't enough to meet their annual costs. And those branches have low reserves, and indeed, they're going to encounter financial difficulties at some point in the future if they haven't already. So we wanted something that was fair. So rather than having these big disparities of big surpluses and big deficits, we want to bring all branches much closer to that break-even position where they're getting funded something which much more closely represents the amount of money that they need to spend in order to be vibrant and active branches. So we think what we've achieved is something which is much closer to that going forward. We needed this, of course, as well to be sustainable. We don't want this to be a one-year solution. We wanted to have confidence that we were going to be able to deliver this formula for all of the years that it remains in use, should it be agreed in June. And we needed to know that it was affordable. We needed to know that it wasn't going to destabilise the union, that it was something that we're going to be able to implement. So that's our first sort of cornerstones. The next question we get asked is, of course, we've got some changes to the branch funding formula at the moment that were agreed as part of motion 126, and why don't we just continue with those? Well, motion 126, which is the motion that drives the work that we're doing at the moment, was very clear that they were interim changes to the branch funding formula. They were not a long-term sustainable solution. And some branches absolutely have benefited from support through motion 126, but the package of proposals that we've developed now are much more holistic, well-rounded approach, and they meet the needs of all branches rather than just that core branches that have been struggling. So we think this is a much more comprehensive solution to the difficulties that branches have been facing, and we'll be able to get into that when we discuss the rest of the package as well. Where's the money coming from? Of course, £3.3 million is not an insignificant amount of money. There are some savings that we've identified within the package of proposals that we're taking to the Special Delegate Conference, and also there's some savings that come from the national budget as well. There'll be, over time, a shift of money and resources towards to ensuring that this additional funding continues to be a reality for branches and they continue to get that support, and we'll be implementing savings where appropriate. Significantly and importantly, I think it's worth saying, none of those savings should impact on branches in any sort of negative way. If we thought changes would have had a negative impact on branches, we've discounted those types of changes going forward. Question about branch industrial action and property funds. Will they be affected? Absolutely not. We have schemes for both of those types of funds. Those schemes continue unchanged going forwards. Where is the extra money targeted at in the new formula? We've made a number of changes, but the primary changes that we have made to the branch funding formula focus on the multiple employer aspect of the branch funding formula. And I really hope everyone can still hear me because my screens have gone off. So I'm just going to keep talking. I don't know if you can see me or hear me or what, but I shall try and fix my IT when I finish this section. So where's the new money? We have targeted that under multiple employers because we know one of the challenges that has been facing branches in recent implementation, the outsourcing and privatisation of members, that's placed a strain on some branches and really caused some difficulties. So we've sought to put more emphasis on that particular element in the branch funding formula. And the other area actually is being targeted at those branches that currently already have low reserves, because again, we know those are branches that are more likely to have been facing financial difficulties already. What that also does actually, it picks up some of the principles that were identified in motion 126, and it takes the short-term element of what some of the principles in motion 126 and tries to utilise them and realise them in a much more long-term and sustainable way, and takes away that short-term element from it. And finally, why did a staffing review not feature as part of this review? Well, it wasn't part of our remit. That would be covered under a separate part of the union. However, I do think it's worth recognising that in doing this review, there was a recognition that it has been a number of years since Unison had a staffing review, and it's been acknowledged by the incoming General Secretary and by the NEC's staffing committee that probably it is time that the union undertook a staffing review, and I believe that those very early discussions are starting to take place. But what we really felt was actually, given the work that we had done, that we had a very, very strong package, and we shouldn't let other parts of work in other parts of the union hold up the proposals that we were taking forward. If we move on to the next, oh, I should probably say before we go on to the next slide, we are planning to run dedicated webinars specifically about the branch funding formula over the next few weeks, as well as the branch support and organising fund, which Nikki is going to cover, and I shall try and get my screens to start working in the meantime. Thanks very much.
Okay, everybody, hello. So in terms of what is the branch support and organising fund, you can see the sums of money are up on the screen of what it would mean in terms of extra funding into the branches. And I have to say, and I'd echo Josie's words, it is a significant increase in terms of what we'll be able to do. And one of the things that we thought was really important was that we would have to start to organise to scale. Clearly, from when we were set up as a union, we have changed so much. So in terms of being able to respond to that agenda, we felt that we needed to change in terms of how we would do that. What's critical is it will replace the regional pool and the fighting fund. Clearly, there are some really good principles behind both of those, and we would draw on those, but it will replace that. And again, in terms of what is the governance here? Well, clearly it will be held at a regional lay level for flexible deployment in and across branches. And again, in terms of that governance, that would be a lay body that would agree those bids, and they would come from the lay side. Next slide. So some of the things we've been asked as part of the process is, what can an organising fund do? So can I pay for a caseworker with a branch support and organising fund? Yes, I can. Can I pay for organising staff with the branch support and organising fund? Yes, I can. Can there be equality bids to the branch support and organising fund? Absolutely, of course there can. Can I buy equipment with the branch support and organising fund? Yes, of course you can. And will the branch support and organising fund application be a nightmare? Absolutely not. What we do want, though, is we want it to be absolutely transparent, and we want it to be fair, and we want there to be a consistency right across the regions about how people will access the money, and there will be accountability back. So if those bids are denied, there would be a rationale about why those bids would be denied, and there would be a set criteria that every bid is set against. So in addition, we wanted to touch upon the subsidised CaseWeb system. So in terms of CaseWeb, as you know, it was introduced following a motion to conference from branches and has already seen over 100 branches sign up to it. CaseWeb was a popular discussion item in the consultative events, so the review group has taken the decision to make it available to branches at 50% reduction for branches of less than 2,000 members. And if this motion goes through, this would mean that 75% of our branches would benefit from this proposal. So, it would make things a lot easier for, activists like us who are doing daily casework. And I'll hand back over to Becky.
Thanks very much, Nikki, and thanks to Josie. So we've just heard about some of the financial benefits of Motion 72, as well as the process that the Branch Resource Review Group went through. We're going to look to questions now. So if you do have questions, please put your hands up. For what we're going to do is, obviously, we gave you the opportunity to submit questions in advance. So I'm just going to see if any of those people are here with us, and if they'd like to ask their question while people are thinking about if they want to ask us a question. John Hughes submitted a question. John, are you in the webinar?
I am, yes.
Hi, John. Nice to see you again. It's been a while.
2 hours, yeah.
John, do you want to go ahead and ask your question, please?
Well, I asked a question earlier on today to Josie in the regional council meeting, but as regional treasurer, I asked my question about the regional funding. Wanted to know in pounds and pence really how much how it would benefit the Cymru Wells region. Now Josie gave me an answer. She mentioned that this morning, but I asked the question then, how much would benefit come to the branches and how much would actually be at the regional level. So I doubt if Josie would have had the opportunity to get that information in for about 5 hours, but that's the question I asked last night and obviously again today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John. Josie, do you want to come back on John's question?
I can do. No, John, I'm afraid since I left you in Wales, virtually, I hasten to add, I have been in meetings back to back all afternoon, so I haven't had an opportunity to delve into any of the data. Having said that, we probably wouldn't share individual data in a forum like this. All I can really do is reiterate the commitments that we gave to Wales this morning, that we've been given in all of our other briefings, and tonight, that every branch will find out what their own settlement will be ahead of this, as well as the collective settlement for their own region. And of course, the national settlement is the one that I had just highlighted, which is the £3.3 million collectively it means for the increase in funding. But that information absolutely will be available to branches, because we understand branches want to be fully informed before they make decisions on this. The package is really important, but we of course absolutely appreciate the money is vitally important to branches as well, so we will do that.
Thanks, Josie. Does any of the panel want to come back on that at all? If not, I'll move on to one of the other questions submitted. Okay, thanks very much for your question, John. The next question I've got is Susan Tibbles. Is Susan in the meeting? I couldn't see her on the participant list. No? Okay. Well, what Susan's asked is for more information on how it would work for employing caseworkers. So, Nikki?
Yeah, I'll come in on that one. So thank you, and thanks for the question. So in terms of the fund, what it will allow us to do is to either directly employ organising staff, which will then be able to be deployed project by project, but they would be employed regionally, or there would be a sum of money where people actually could bid in through a process for a particular project. So if we take I don't know, school trusts, you want to do a particular project about organising in a set of schools, you could advertise it in terms of a project and second, you know, one of your activists through to the project. Clearly there would be a due process around that recruitment, but it wouldn't be seen that people would be employing staff through branches at all. And I have to say, one of the things that we did have some criticism around the Fighting Fund was just the longevity of those and the employment issues. So this really does seek to address those issues. Thanks, Becky.
Thanks very much, Nikki. Michael Thomas, I can see you've got your hand raised. Would you like to ask a question, please? If we can get Michael unmuted.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate that. I was very interested in what you had to say about the case web. I picked up on you said there was 50% reduction for branches with less than 2,000 members. Is that it? Is that the actual sort of the one-off cut-off point? Or what about branches, say, with 2,200 members, for instance? Is there, you know, a bit of a sliding scale on that, or would it be a full 100% sort of payment for those branches?
Thanks very much, Michael. Maureen, you were involved with the development of CaseWeb. Would you like to come back on Michael's question?
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Becky. Thanks for the question, Michael. Unfortunately, no, the 2,000 is the cut-off, and I think you expected that answer to be that way. We looked at a sliding scale. We looked at all sorts of things in order to try and give CaseWeb. You know, we did consider providing CaseWeb free for all branches. If I'm brutally honest, that would have been my preferred option, but CaseWeb comes at a cost of £750,000 a year, which means that would drastically have reduced the 3.3 million that is going into the organising fund, and I think currently that is where our money needs to go, so that it is helping members directly in a more constructive way. What I will say is there's about 125 branches currently registered with CaseWeb. The more branches that register for CaseWeb, the more chance that we've got of reducing the cost of the licence from the supplier. If all of our branches were to go to CaseWeb, then that cost of 750k we could probably bring down to about 4.5. So branches would really benefit it in that way. Using CaseWeb will also address our green agenda. So it's less of a carbon footprint. It's also talking to a lot of other departments now that we've got on CaseWeb. We're developing our legal stuff that will link in with CaseWeb. Our professional services unit has gone on to CaseWeb, so there's a much more equitable transfer of information. And whilst we are still working with the supplier in relation to accessibility of CaseWeb in respect of reasonable adjustments and ensuring that it is fit for everybody, that is work that is still continuing, so that CaseWeb will be a fully functioning process that is open to all of our activists, all of our branches. So that is the rationale currently. I'm not saying that will be the rationale going forward, because certainly I would love to see CaseWeb in the future free at the point of use for all our branches. And I think ultimately, if the motion is passed at conference and the implementation group is set up, that is certainly something that from my work stream we are recommending that the implementation group look at going forward. Thanks, Becky.
Thanks very much, Maureen. I'm going to go now to Sean Fox. Before I do, just to say, Liz Brennan and Neil Bland, I can see you've both got your hands up. So once we've gone to Sean, I'll come to the two of you, and then we'll move on with the presentation at that point. So Sean, if you want to come in, please.
Thanks, Becky. Evening, everybody. It's related to the calculation itself, so that it may sound like I'm having three questions. I'm not, because they're interrelated, so apologies. In terms of the actual reserves calculation, obviously it goes down from 16 to 12 in the proposal. And what wasn't clear to our branch when we looked at it, is that based on full members or all members in terms of how you calculate the £12 per head? So is it people who are in service or including retired and unwaged? In terms of reserves, we had understood you were entitled to disregard what I would broadly call exit costs. So if the branch had to make someone redundant, obviously there may be a liability, but I couldn't see anything on that in the guidance. And finally, and I think it's been answered, can we have some really simple ready reckoner where we put in our numbers and it comes out with a number at the other end? It would be really appreciated, I think, for branches to understand what this might mean for them.
Thanks very much, Sean. So yeah, obviously looking at the funding, could I turn to you, Josie, to come back on that as a starter?
Yeah, not a problem. So the reserves in a branch are measured on full members, so those who are earning and paying full subscriptions. That's the first question. Regarding redundancy costs, there seems to be sort of a belief or a myth, it seems to be, that there is such a thing as redundancy funds in branches. That there's not, that doesn't exist. It never has done. We understand and appreciate, of course, that some branches like to ensure that they have sufficient funds in their reserves in case the need should arise and they do need to pay a redundancy cost, but there is actually currently no provision for that in the branch funding scheme. The one thing that I would really say in relation to that is, while we wouldn't say it's bad practice by any stretch for branches to be prepared for that should there be need to utilise it. Two things: if a branch felt they had to make somebody redundant and they didn't have the means to do that, that is one of the things where the National Union is here to support branches, and we make a couple of arrangements probably every year whereby we agree to pay the redundancy costs for a branch who needs to make a member of their staff redundant, and we make an arrangement whereby they repay that money to the National Union over an agreed period of time. So it's effectively an interest-free loan arrangement. The other thing as well is why we don't think that it's a hugely necessary fund that branches hold is because what generally happens is when a branch makes a member of branch employed staff redundant, of course, they have a far more disposable income in their branch going forward because that committed cost that was previously there is no longer there. So while it depletes their reserves in the short term, often branches find that they replenish those reserves quite quickly because their fixed costs have gone down so quickly. So that doesn't exist, and there's no proposal to change that at the current time. The branch funding formula ready reckoner. It's not a bad idea, but it's an IT task beyond my abilities, I think it's fair to say. And we haven't done one at this stage. We would have to get somebody in specifically to design kind of a little ready reckoner type of bit of software and things like that. I think in the interest of time, what we've discussed with is that we want regional secretaries, regional conveners to work together to meet with and have those discussions with branch secretaries and branch treasurers about what the impact is going to be on them. And also, I think it's probably worth noting, of course, Branch income can fluctuate on an annual basis because we measure a number of branch circumstances. So while you would use a ready reckoner, that would only kind of be the snapshot on that particular day. What we hope and what we've really tried to do is promote a conversation about the not just that one day, the whole package, and also what the branch funding formula means for branches going forward. So it's a sort of broader discussion, we hope. I hope that answers your question, Sean. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Sean. And yeah, thanks for that, Josie. Liz, can I bring you in, please?
Yes, hi everybody. I just wanted to go back to the question about the the regional pools and the bidding for that. So would it be solely for branches to apply for funds from that, or is it as now that regional bids can apply from the regional pools, and just how that would address the issues of longevity for branch staff, because you gave the example of suggesting secondments of activists. So I'm just a bit thinking aloud about, would that allow for permanent employment to be made from branches, or would it be kind of the similar situation as now, is that it would only be relevant for project work?
Are you happy for me to come back in on that, Becky?
Yeah, absolutely, Nikki. Thanks for the question, Liz.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Yeah, so the bidding process, so a self-organised group can put a bid in. You know, we're really hoping that cross branches would put bids in. You know, we've got branches that have, you know, within a 5-mile radius, a health branch, a local government branch, and a university branch. So, you know, what can they do together in terms of organising? But actually, it's not for branches to employ staff. It's for branches to look at project work, particular project work, that they then would be able to put an application in to either, like I said, draw resource down from a committed organiser who is part of the organising team, or to say, actually, you know, we would like to put a recruitment process out, because we've got some, you know, there's a number of people who we've identified within a particular area who we think would be really strong in this area. But it wouldn't be for centrally employing staff from branches. Clearly, if people want to employ staff through, you know, a number of branches have, you know, admin staff, or they have caseworkers for the community voluntary sector, then that's a different process, isn't it? And you would be able to use, you know, your funds in the way that you do now. But that isn't what's envisaged through the organising fund. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Josie?
Not right now, no.
So I hope that answers your question, Liz.
Yeah, it's clearer, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Right, Neil, thanks for waiting. We'll come to you.
Thanks, Becky. Sorry, yeah, I took my hand down because Liz kind of like had some of my themes for my question. And I'm sorry I haven't got my camera on, I'm having technical issues. Yeah, it was just around the time specific and the longevity of the projects and stuff. You know, does that create more work in its sense, where if we're trying to second or look at various ways of putting people into certain projects, how we may fall foul of any employment law processes. But you've kind of, Josie's kind of mentioned it, and so did Nikki, so it's kind of like I've got the gist of it, but I would just more around the time specificness of the projects. What is the minimum and what's the longest you can go to before we get into any employment law situation?
Josie's hands up. Go on, Josie, you go.
I was just going to say, so the time scale of projects would be entirely within the authority of the region to determine. So you may have a project which is very short term because it may be to respond to a particular issue that's arisen and you need to run a campaign. So that might be something that's much, much shorter than 12 months. or as a region, you might identify some much longer term projects that you know you're going to have to invest in for a long time. That's for your region to decide. And again, of course, you might have some projects that are running for the more traditional sort of 12 months that we've become familiar with through things like the General Fighting Fund. That's regions will decide that, because that's part of the decision-making process for those bids. I think the one area probably where I maybe wanted to come in after Nikki was around the staff that are being employed, and it probably goes a little bit to the heart of your question, Neil, which is we wouldn't necessarily recruit staff for a project and then let them go at the end of a project, because this fund is part of the branch funding package going forward, there's quite a high level of security that funding will continue year on year. So what we anticipate we'll be able to do is employ a small number of staff whose role will be to support projects that are supported through this fund. So the staff group would remain the same. Their projects would change as regional priorities changed, as different bids came in and were successful, but the staff that would support those projects would remain consistent. I think that has a number of benefits. It doesn't create employment law problems for us for a start, but also what it does is, as the staff move through different projects, their confidence, their ability, their knowledge, all of that grows, and then hopefully they're able to achieve better and stronger outcomes on the sort of projects that they're supporting within the union. Thanks.
Thanks, Josie. And yeah, thanks for all those questions. We're going to move back now to the presentation, and I'm going to hand you over to Maureen.
Okay, thanks very much, Becky. Hi, everybody. Over the next few slides, you'll see other elements of the package. You may also wonder why so many so-called business as usual elements in the package, but I think that they need to be there, because given the extra backing from a conference mandate, as well as the commitment to set up an implementation group that will ensure that the measures in our package will happen and not fall by the wayside as we go forward. The investment for the RMS upgrade of 2.3 million and the branch resources review process identified the urgency of upgrading the RMS sooner rather than later, and that's why the project was expedited. And if this motion goes through in June, the rollout will begin shortly after. Similar to this was the feedback from branch treasurers. They had told us that support was needed with processing expenses, and the team at the Unison Centre then devised a module to deal with expenses within OLBA. And again, if this motion goes through, the rollout will begin shortly after the special conference. The biggest ever revamp of the organising school since the removal of the Union Learning Fund has been key to a lot of our thinking around ensuring that training is provided both to activists and members alike. And then we've got the new National Procurement Service. We know that many of you have had to invest in equipment during the pandemic in order to keep your branches working. So a one-stop support service like this has the possibility of saving branches like you and like me time by making the purchasing process a lot easier. Though we do recognise that it's not always the cheapest option, but as trade unionists, we should always be concerned with the employment rights and conditions of working people around the world. When these workers are involved in producing goods for use by public bodies in the UK, and we have a real opportunity to influence employers and take the lead when they are looking at procurement, and that being an ethical one that we would support. So what is the branch service portal? The feedback in the consultation process repeatedly indicated that branches needed easy access to resources. And if, like me, you find it extremely difficult to navigate our current website to find information quickly and timely, that is very difficult, I think, at the moment. So the NEC, if the NEC endorses the package, this will be another one-stop site for activists under time pressure, with content driven by activists on request. And I think it needs to be said here that many of our employers are now trying to access our website to look for information about what we're going to be saying to them. Our bargaining papers are on there. So I think that this one-stop portal where login will be is key to saving us a lot of time when we're trying to do branch work. And we expect this to grow and be responsive to feedback as it takes off. So facility time, this was referred to earlier. Building on our successful facility time work to date, it's clear from our engagement activity that branches have got experiences to share. This has to be a topic that people really want to campaign on, and we have to find a way to make this campaign as high profile and as important as all our other campaigns. If the motion passes again in June at the Special Delegate Conference, work on this will be started immediately in July. The centralised accommodation and travel booking service, this is something that we looked long and hard at. We took on what branches were telling us about trying to find hotels for conferences. So we are looking to introduce a centralised accommodation and booking service for delegates attending Unison conferences. This will provide a one-stop service for all booking and queries related to conference travel and accommodation, and hopefully take the stress out of branches having to make those arrangements. All branches would be able to use the centralised and pooled booking system for their travel through the union's national travel provider for national rulebook conferences. And also, like I say, to save time and money. The costs would go to the Unison conference office. So the branch wouldn't have to outlay it initially. It would all be done through the conference office. There'd be no reclaiming after the event through the conference centre. We also plan to introduce a reasonable adjustment pool, which will be accessible to all branches. This again, we believe, is extremely important to ensure that there is increased participation and nobody is restricted from attending any of our democratic processes. The bargaining support unit, this will promote better existing bargaining support guides, gather regular and insightful feedback on content currently available, continue to build the bargaining agreements database, and create and deliver resources in line with the branch activists' needs. Online meetings, well, we're all very used to those now. How many times have we all said you're on mute? Any savings from online meetings will be banked and ploughed back directly into branches. The review felt that all national and regional committees after the pandemic should offer hybrid online and physical attendance at all meetings. National and regional IT and meeting room facilities would need to be reviewed, and that is already underway. The National Disabled Members Committee representatives were clear that choice was important for them, but that is fastly improving. None of the current online meeting software systems meet all the needs of every one of our activists. So it is something that we are working on, and we will work on that with our disabled members national committee to ensure that we get it as right as we possibly can. Affiliations, as you know, Unison affiliates to many organisations, from the TUC to the Labour Research Department to Cuba Solidarity Campaign. Not only do we affiliate at national level, but also regions and branch levels. We have recommended that we publish a list of all Unison affiliations that nationally we support and to what value we support them. This will help branches and regions make informed decisions when they receive requests to affiliate. Meetings to discuss the Code of Good Branch Practice are already taking place. There is a review that was recommended by different parts of the work group, of the BRR work group, and it was agreed that it needed to be updated in at least 3 areas: online meeting procedures, easier and quicker arrangements for annual general meetings, and encouragement of branches to sharing resources locally. And then it comes down to the implementation group. So if motion 72 is passed at the special conference, there will need to be an implementation group. This will be lay-led, and they will ensure that all items of motion 72 package are delivered following the conference, which is key, and being lay-led is an absolute must for that going forward. That's it from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maureen. We'll move again to questions. So I'm just going to move through some of the questions that have been submitted in advance to start with. I'd like to go to Rose Minty Tutton, please. I believe Rose was in the meeting.
I'm here. I just don't know how to unmute myself.
I can hear you now, Rose.
Apologies. Mine was about, because we have a branch admin, and we have to pay for her. And what would happen, because we have less than 2,000 members, but we have to pay for a full-time admin. So I was really quite worried about what would happen to her if we weren't able to pay her wages anymore.
Okay, yep. Thanks, Rose. Can I go to the panel to respond to Rose, please?
I'm happy to answer that if that's helpful, Becky.
Yes, please. Yes, thanks very much, Josie.
No problem. So, hi, Rose. I don't know if there's a particular set of circumstances that mean that you think you're not going to be able to continue to pay your member of staff going into the future, or if it's more of a hypothetical question. The first thing I'd say is if it's a very real issue that you think you're facing, in the first instance, if you think you're going to have those sorts of financial difficulties, speak to your regional organiser, get some support within the region, and if appropriate, they'll refer you on to the national finance team, and we can provide both short or long-term support if that's what you need. And as I said when Sean asked the question earlier, if it really is that you just need some bridging funding to to pay redundancy costs, we can do those sorts of things. If it's more because of changes to the branch funding scheme and more hypothetical, what if this poses a problem for your branch continuing to employ a member of staff? It really shouldn't. That's not what this the changes are designed to do. No branch should be placed at financial detriment as a result of these proposals. There will be changes to the branch funding formula. It means some branches will get greater funding in the future. Some branches won't do so well out of that, and we've got to be honest about the fact that that may be the case. I talked earlier about how we have some branches that have large surpluses and some that are having large deficits, and we want to be closer to that break-even position. As branches, if a branch was in a position where they did need to start spending their reserves, they would come as their reserves reduced. What would happen is they would increase the amount of money that they were entitled to under the branch funding formula, because the branch funding formula measures the reserves in a branch, and it's an additional factor in which you can gain more funding. So no branch should be worse off in the long term under the proposals that we're proposing. I'm not sure if that entirely answers your question, Rose, in terms of your own circumstances and your own staff. But if you can afford your staff now, the proposals shouldn't cause a problem for you being able to afford staff in the future.
Thanks, Josie. Thanks for your question, Rose. I'll take a couple that were submitted in advance, because I'm obviously conscious people took the time to do that, and then I'll move to the floor. Let's see who's next on my list. Here we are. Sorry, I put my list. I've got my list all out of order. Right, let's get back to it. I've got Michael Vaughan. Is Michael in the meeting?
I am.
Hi, Michael. Do you want to ask your question, please?
Yeah, I think it's sort of been answered by Josie earlier on, but I was concerned that the staffing of the union wasn't part of the review. And I feel that unless this is included now, we're going to have to revisit this whole process later on, because a lot of the coalface work of the union is done at branches. And as a fairly new branch secretary, I have concerns about the type of directed support that I do get from region. And that's not meant as a criticism. It's just, I think there's ways of making the relationship work better. But the question still stands that if 60% of the income of the union isn't covered by this review, then really, excuse my cat getting in the way, shouldn't we postpone the review until the staffing of the whole union is included, particularly as some work is being undertaken already. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael. I think it might be appropriate to come to you, Maureen, in response to Michael. Is that if that's okay with you?
Yeah, thanks very much, Becky. Michael, thanks for your question. It's not the first time that I've been asked around why the staffing budget has not been considered. Well, Josie did cover one element of that a little bit earlier by saying that it wasn't part of the remit of motion 126. And I'll declare an interest. I've been the chair of the NEC staffing committee for the last 4 years. At the start of the BRR project 2 years ago, I gave a very clear commitment that there would be a staffing review, but this has got to be a wholesale staffing review. It can't just be piecemeal, looking at the centre to see what can go there. It's got to be across the board, and then we entered into general secretary elections, and we've got to take account of what the new general secretary would want as a structure as well. So with that in mind, I've already spoken to the general secretary. She is also as committed as I and the staffing committee to undertake a review. Those discussions preliminary have already started. But like any organisation, we are an employer, and as we are we might be a trade union, but we are also an employer. And there has got to be the right and proper approach to that, and any staffing review would need to include all of the staff and their trade unions for collective bargaining issues. So it will be a staffing review. It will be a whole union staffing review, and that includes all of regions which you've just mentioned, Michael. Out of the staffing budget, I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't say that out of the whole staffing budget, 65% of that budget lies in regions. So the majority of the staffing budget is in regions, providing that support to branches that branches require. But taking account of what the review has said, that we need more resources, then this is why it is so important to get this review right, and to hold this review up now instead of progressing it would be the wrong thing to do. Why hold the things up that were found that we need to do and can do now in light of holding a staffing review? What we can say is that whatever the staffing review shows going forward, if there is a saving, then that saving will go into the union and be put out to branches and be used by the union in the right and proper way to support our members. But not all staffing reviews come out with a saving, and I think that needs to be realised, that more staffing reviews can come out with efficiency savings and not cash savings. So, and I can see you shaking your head, Michael, but you know, we've got to do this right, we've got to do it properly, and we've got to do it by the book. We are an employer.
Not looking at savings. You've misunderstood if you think I'm suggesting any savings. I just think the redirection of resources is needed from the regions to the branches, and I think we'll be back to discussing this over the next few years, so it's worth postponing.
No, then you're absolutely right. We've got to know where we need our resources, and if that is a rejigging of what the structures are within branches and them needing more of something and less of others. So for example, if we need more LOs and AOs and less ROs, then we need to address that, and we need to, and that is a reconfiguration of our structures. And I am committed to doing that if I can find, but we need to know what the regions want. We know what branches want because the reviews told us that they want more resources. We now need to look at our structures across the board. And if those resources need, if those resources need restructuring in some way, then that has got to be part of this process. Because with any staffing review, it's not just, and I'm glad you said it, Michael, because it's not just about finding savings, it's about having our resources exactly where they're needed. And those resources are needed to provide our branches with the support so that they can do the best possible things for our members. And that is where my commitment lies to this review.
Okay, thanks for your question, Michael, and for your response, Maureen. I'm just conscious of time, and I want to make sure we get through as much as we can and also speak to as many people as we can. I'm going to bring Rob in now. Sonia and Kim, I can see that you've got your hands raised. We will have a final question session at the end. So I'm going to bring Rob in now. We'll return to the presentation. And then when we get to that section, Sonia, I'll bring you in at that point, and Kim, you'll be second. So Rob, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hello, panel, and everybody else on the call here. I think my question probably goes to Maureen, as it stems from her presentation, and the 14 sort of aspects that are tagged onto motion 72. And in particular, I mean, I certainly agree, Maureen, the website is absolutely diabolical. Everybody on this call will have had issues searching for searching for information on that website. So if employers are searching for the bargaining papers, I'd be wanting to know what they've put in there, if they've found them, and maybe we could share that information more widely. But the main issue is really about the RMS upgrade. I mean, I've been a branch secretary now for 12 years, and in all of that time, we've always complained about the RMS system. All right, and anybody who has access to RMS will know what I'm talking about. Now, I mean, I see these as systems that any employer would implement to support its own staff. So my question is, why are they being tagged on with voting for this motion? And if the motion isn't passed, are we saying that the upgrade to the website and the upgrade to RMS will not be implemented afterwards? And a second question, you mentioned the reasonable adjustment pool, and I fully support that. And it was a question that I asked Josie earlier last week. You know, why is that being tagged into one of the sort of bonuses that branches or members will receive when if they vote for this motion, when it's a key equality issue and it should just be implemented tomorrow? Thank you. That's all.
Okay, do you want me to come in, Becky?
Yes, please, Maureen.
Okay, I'll try and be as quick as I can, not so I don't take up too much time. I think I'll take the reasonable adjustment one first, if I can, and that came out of discussions within my work group, to be honest, and it came from me, and that was around. I was also a branch secretary until recently, and you know, we all pay into the creche fund for conferences, and I saw reasonable adjustments in the same being the same principle of that, and that every branch should give to in order for all of our members to be able to participate in our structures. So because it was born out of the BRR and the work stream, that is why it's in with where it is in the 14 in the package of the 14 items. So yes, reasonable adjustments are key to us, but that's where it was born out of, and I think that's where it belongs within that package, so that it shows the sort of things that each of the work streams did reflect on. In respect of the RMS, that came out of my work stream. We knew that work was being undertaken. We knew that it was going to be very, very costly. But a recommendation that came out was that this needed to be done and done very quickly. And therefore we asked for that element to be brought forward. And FRMC, the National Finance Committee, were approached in order to bring that funding forward to enable us to get the RMS system work up and running a lot quicker. It's moving to one system for everybody. We all know that there's RMS and there's WORMS, and they didn't talk to each other, so it's one system that will do everything. And we needed it to be up to date within today's technology. And again, this is about saving our activists time in the branches, which also come out of one of the other work streams. So it was tying that in together and just bringing that forward. And again, it needs to sit within the review because that's where the work came out of.
Thanks, Maureen. Thank you. We're going to move on now to Lillian, and I appreciate, obviously, we're getting close to time running out, so I'll pass straight over to you, Lillian, if that's okay.
Thanks very much, Becky. Hopefully, colleagues, you can all hear me. And thanks to the colleagues that are still with us going through this presentation. What I'm going to do is I've got a couple of slides just to share with you. Really, it's some summing up around the information that you've already had. Maybe just to recap and go into a bit more detail around some of the process issues. So I won't keep you long, and I'll go through this as quickly as possible, because for us as a review team, it's hugely important that we hear from you, the members on this call. So this slide, colleagues, really just focuses in around some of the process issues that we've been speaking about all evening. And motion 126, which was passed at conference in 2019, really gave us the mandate to undertake this detailed review that we're presenting to you today. The review itself has been underway, as I say, for 2 years, but really, for those of you that have been in Unison for a long time, you'll know that successive conferences since 2011 have spoke about our branch resources and how we needed to review them. So this review has been underway for a considerable amount of time, but really the detailed focus that we're presenting to you this evening has been around a 2-year time frame. All of that reviewing, and certainly within that motion, the motion called for 24 lay members, members of branches across our organisation, across Unison, activists like you, to come together to undertake the review in its entirety. So there was 12 from the NEC and 12 from the regions that did the review. We worked very closely with national colleagues in order for us to get to the position that we're in now. The resources that we deployed in that time around ensuring that we came out with the best possible outcomes were making sure that we engage fully with those members involved, but also the wider trade union to engage in that space as well. So what happened? Well, COVID happened. And when COVID happened, we did take a pause. We took a pause because we needed to understand, regroup and reflect to see what the priorities were. We still felt that the priority was for the review group to continue its work and to continue our focus around making sure that we had a package to bring to you in 2021, which was the mandate from that conference motion. So in that time, as a group of 24, we quickly realised that we needed to do some detailed work within some of the work streams. We established 4 work streams. And those 4 work streams went into a lot more detail, and you've got the chairs of each of those work streams on the call this evening. So the work streams themselves, as I say, went into a huge amount of detail. We planned initially in our project plan to have 8 meetings of the branch resources review itself and 12 meetings of the project working groups. The reality was that over that 2 years' time, we had almost 16 meetings of the work streams and the work streams themselves. We had over 76 meetings. So COVID really gave us a bit of a benefit, because we quickly realised and understood that we needed to use the IT platforms in order for us to continue our work. And by using those platforms, we were able to meet more often. We were able to go into a lot more detail, and we were able to share a lot more information with each other on those groups. So the planned approach that we had, really, we certainly exceeded that plan by organising in that time frame all of those meetings. So what did it tell us? Well, it told us that that we needed to engage fully with the members, and to do that in February 2020. One of the work streams developed a survey, and that survey went out to all branches in Unison, and from those branches, 357 branches responded to the survey. We wanted to understand what was really important, and Josie and others have taken you through those slides to update what was important to you as branches. And we think this package delivers on what you've said is important to you. We've consulted with over 2,000 activists. We've gone through a number of regions. We've met with regional committees, regional councils, and they've effectively informed our thinking around this. The branches through the survey say that you needed more time. You'll see in the package there's a commitment to do a detailed work around facility time. The branches told us that you needed more regional support, the branch support and organising fund, which I think is a fantastic opportunity for regions to take leadership within those regions around the regional priorities, but also to have that lay leadership and lay democracy and lay oversight of what it is you want to achieve within those regions. And you said you needed more funding, and this branch resources review gives you that and delivers on that. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I just want to briefly focus on what it is that we felt was important. So why did we need to undertake the review, and what did the review tell us? So you'll see in this slide that I'm preaching to the converted. What have we had over the last 10 years? Absolute pounding around the austerity agenda. How have we coped with that? We've collectively worked together through branches, regions and national in order for us to be a united, strong force within our union. So we've seen our living standards fall. We've seen a number of, we've seen the living standards fall. We've seen a number of issues that we've had to deal with, and it's been our regions and our national organisation and our branches that have dealt with that. So in that time, colleagues, we've delivered, and we are asking for you to support us in delivering a new package around the package of reforms that we're asking you to look at. And we did a piece of work around looking at, well, what do other unions do? What can we learn from those unions? And what can they share with us that's important for us to take into the review? And we recognised quickly that in terms of the funding that we offer our branches, Unison by far is more supportive to branches and more supportive in terms of delivering on the subscriptions that branches receive. For example, GMB offers 10% to branches. So they get the 10%, they have to do what they have to do with that 10%. Unite offers 7.5% to branches. So you'll see from the package of measures that we're putting in place that we significantly offer our branches and support our branches through more funding. We see that as our collective measure in terms of all of our elements within the regions, branches and national collectively working to make sure that we deliver for our members. Can I get the next slide, please? You'll be glad to know you're almost there in this presentation. Just let me sum up by giving you some of the elements and just reinforcing some of the package that colleagues have taken you through this evening. So we're now at the end process where we're asking you to seriously consider what it is on the table, what we are about to ask you to vote on. So the proposals that you've got before you, we feel that they're putting us as an organisation in a firm footing. So, and we believe that the package that we've developed, that the 24 lay members have developed, are bringing to you through this special conference and asking you to vote on, are fair, sustainable and affordable. Ultimately, we need to make sure that all of those boxes are ticked, and we believe the package that we're bringing to you now absolutely meets that objective and that agenda. We know, and I've explained to you, that we did a huge amount of work in terms of the review itself, got into a huge amount of detail, get everything we could to ensure that we could bring to you a package that we want you to support. The work streams have worked tirelessly. The support and the commitment from every single lay member and every member of staff needs to be commended. And the package itself has gone through a number of forums where it has absolutely been supported. The Branch Resources Review supports the package, the NEC supports the package, and the Finance Resource and Management Committee also endorse and support this package. Maureen has indicated in her presentation that we will need to have a small lay member group to look at whenever we vote on this, whenever we agree at conference that this motion goes through. We will need to have that small lay member led group to take those recommendations, to realise them back into your branch. And that's something that we're committed to ensuring happens. So last slide, you'll be glad to hear. This, we're asking you to make sure, firstly, that you're registered to be a delegate at the special conference, because we need your voice. We need to hear from you in terms of what you think around this. We're asking you, and we're commending to you motion 72. We're asking you to support it. We believe that this absolutely unifies our union and ensures that we are stronger together, collectively, using our collective strength, our collective muscle, using all our resources, focused in and around ensuring that we understand what branches are saying through the review, through the survey, and we think absolutely that the package that's before you now delivers on all of those elements. And we're asking you to vote for change and to vote for motion 72 at the special delegate conference. Becky, I'm going to stop there. That was a really, really quick run through. I was really conscious of time. Hopefully, colleagues, you managed to understand my accent, but also understand the summing up that I did. And can I thank you all for your forbearance and staying with us this evening, and I look forward to the questions.
Thanks very much, Lillian. Thank you. We have 4 minutes before we're due to end, but I did promise that we would take the questions from Sonia and Kim. So I'm going to ask you each to ask your questions, and then we'll come back to both of you in one go, if that's okay. So Sonia, are you still with us this evening?
I am. Hiya there, everybody. I mean, it's very quick. I mean, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with this. I mean, I think it's a long time coming. You know, I welcome that. Been trying to get something done and bring us into the 21st century, I think, for a while. And I totally agree that the timing is now right. We've got a new General Secretary. I think the time is to move on this. And some of the things are absolutely, you know, I guess we'd appreciate those changes, you know, as swiftly as possible. My only worry is that I have we are quite a small branch. We've got about just about 980 members, so we're not the 2,000 over 2,000. I probably missed this, and I do apologise, but I mean, are you sort of saying really that smaller branches should collect together in order to, say, get support for casework? Because I think really casework is what most branches are inundated with, and particularly I think since the pandemic. And maybe I've missed it, but I wasn't quite clear how that would work for branches of our size. We don't have an admin support at the moment, and I do most of the casework. So anything that helps with that, I'm all for it. So I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sonia. Kim, can I ask you to come in, please, and then we'll address the questions together.
Hi, yeah, I was agreeing really with what Michael spoke about earlier. Staff seem to get employed, and often that's the last we see of them. I welcome more staff, but will they actually help? Their job descriptions say they should be helping, but it seems that a lot of branches don't feel that this is happening. I was glad to hear what Maureen said, and hopefully things will be changing in our region as we have a new inclusive convener team and a new regional secretary. But I just worry that things are going to be the same, and branches will continue to be overwhelmed by their workload, especially as we are volunteers, you know, and a lot of us are very low paid. Lillian said before about other trade unions. I find it very frustrating when I hear that other trade union people locally on myself very more supported by their trade union and their trade union staff than we are. So, you know, what can you make me and my branch do to believe, you know, what is actually going to be promised and what's going to happen?
Okay, thanks very much, Kim. If I can invite the panel to come back on either of those questions, please. You've got a minute.
Shall I come in on the staffing point?
Please, Maureen. Yes, please.
Kim, I'd like to say you've got my word, which you absolutely have got my word, that there will be a review. and not just a review to find efficiencies and savings, but a review of the reconfiguration and review of job specifications and role specifications, so that you will get the support that you need within your branch, and every other branch will as well. Because currently I do not believe that a lot of our role specifications are fit for purpose of our union now. They've not been reviewed for donkey's years, and now is the time to do that. Now is the time that our branches need that support and that review. And I am fully committed and fully behind this. The General Secretary agrees with where I am on it, and I hope that will not change going forward. So you've certainly got my commitment. You've got the commitment of the General Secretary that this is going to happen. So I hope that does alleviate some of your concerns.
Thanks, Maureen. Does anyone want to come back to Sonia?
Nikki, can I come back to Sonia, if that's okay?
Please.
And I know probably Nikki wants to come in on this as well, because in terms of smaller branches and whether or not and how smaller branches organise to access the Branch Support and Organising Fund, I think is absolutely crucial. And that again needs to happen through support and discussion within the region. Can I maybe just give you a couple of examples of where we've supported those smaller branches in my own region in Scotland? We have geographical branches, of differing sizes, and we've organised around resource centres, for example. And those resource centres support small branches, large branches, and medium-sized branches, all within that concept of a resource centre. And each of those branches get the same support through the staffing complement, but also administrative support. So there is ways in which larger branches can offer that support to some of those smaller branches through that resource methodology. But one of the things I think, Sonia, that you're asking around the small branches, I'm a small branch, will I need to then join up with a bigger branch to maybe perhaps advance their priorities? Well, the answer to that is no, because your identity is important as a small branch. And if that's something that you want to maintain, then the Branch Support and Organising Fund is there to support you to do that. However, if you do want to combine resources with other small branches or bigger branches, then that fund is also there to support you to do that. So it's not about us telling you, it's about you telling us how you want this to work. And I think that's hugely important, that the members on this call can have their voices heard, have their wishes and their ambitions within their branches heard through those discussions, because this fund is going to be, as Nikki said, delivered through the lay structures, and the governance arrangements will be through the lay structures, and we will make sure that as lay leaders within the regions that there is a fair opportunity for all branches, irrespective of which service group, how small or large you are, that there's fair opportunity for everyone to get a fair access of the fund.
You've covered that off superbly, Lillian. I wouldn't have anything to add, so thanks.
Thanks very much. It's 33 minutes past 7, and obviously we only promised to keep you for 90 minutes. I apologise to the people on the call and those who haven't joined us who submitted questions in advance. We've still got Sue, Teresa, Jane, Adrian, Alison, Billy, Dawn, Tracy, David. We will make sure that you get an answer to your question as you would have done in this meeting. So if you put your question in advance, we'll make sure that you do get a response to your specific question, because you've taken the time to actually contact us with that. So we will get a response out to you. We've had a variety of questions. I would like to bring this session to a close. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your evening to join us. I'd like to thank the people who asked us the questions. I'd like to thank my colleagues in the panel for being here today and presenting this. And I'd like to obviously extend the invitation to everybody here to join us on further webinars where we'll be discussing the branch resource review in specific details. So look out for details of that. And obviously your regions should be in contact with you in some form to obviously take this further and to continue that discussion. So reach out to your region if you want to, or your regional convener. We're all here for you. Thank you very much for your time. And I wish you a good evening and hope you all stay safe. Thanks ever so much, everybody. Take care.